everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. If there are any audio discrepancies, I completely apologize for them. It has definitely been a while since I've did one of these videos, but I thought I would just do kind of like a quick one for you. So the other day, I thought of this idea because I was like, I don't want to do every single season of Doctor Who, especially because I don't necessarily have access to the original seasons of Doctor Who. I only have access to rebooted Doctor Who. So I was just hit with this idea to why not just rank every Weeping Angel episode of Doctor Who in general. And if you would like to just get straight into the ranking, you can skip to this timestamp right here. But if you would like to hear a bit more of my reasoning and my parameters on which episodes I'm going to constitute or which episodes I'm going to be including in this ranking, then stick around. So basically, throughout my research, first of all, Weeping Angels were only introduced with the rebooted Doctor Who. And if there are any Weeping Angel episodes that have come out with the 14th Doctor, I'm unaware of those because I do not have access to watching them. So those will not be included on this list. But as I was doing my research, there are quite a few different Weeping Angel episodes, but there were some episodes that did not make it to the list because I was not including episodes that were not centering the Weeping Angels as the big bad of the episode. So for say, I did not include episodes where the Weeping Angels were basically making cameos. I think a good example is an episode like the God Complex. The entire premise of the episode is them trying to escape this hotel, and Weeping Angel does make an appearance, but the big bad of the episode ends up actually being kind of like a centaur type creature. Episodes like that weren't included. Throughout my research, I kind of looked at what the fans were saying, looked at what other sources were saying, and that is how I decided what would be included as Weeping Angel specific episodes and what would not be included as Weeping Angel specific episodes. So if I missed an episode that you would have considered a Weeping Angel episode, I am sorry. I was just going with what the majority consensus decided what constitute a Weeping Angel episode. But let's get straight into the ranking. I should also say there are heavy spoilers within this video as I give a detailed synopsis because I want to give you basically the gist of every episode so that at the end of this video you can possibly create your own ranking in the comment section down below. So just letting you know right now, there are heavy spoilers for the plot of these episodes, but also some aspects of the season. So if you want to go watch these episodes and then come back, you can. I will put the episode, the name of the episode, the season, and the number episode in the description section down below if you want to go and watch them and then come back to this video. But if you don't and you just kind of want to watch it, then feel free to stick around. If at any point you see me looking down, just know that I'm referring back to my notes that I made for every single episode. Just want to say that. But we're going to be starting in order from the first appearance of the Weeping Angels to the last appearance of them being the big bad in an episode. So the first episode that we are going to be going over is Blink. It is from season 3, episode 10. Basically, the premise of the episode is that this woman named Sally Sparrow enters this mansion taking pictures. She just likes exploring haunted places and haunted spaces. She comes across this note on the wall that kind of is too specific to her, especially because it says her name, for it not to be referring to her. And she also has these different occurrences kind of just happening throughout her day. Like, for example, she is seeing the 10th Doctor show up on TV screens. She is running into people, and then the next thing you know, these people are gone, and she's running into older versions of them, and she does not completely understand why. Now, she really doesn't actually get on the Angel's radar until she decides to steal a key from one of the angels back in the mansion. This key ends up being the key to the TARDIS, and as we all know, the angels would love to have access to the TARDIS as it would give them access to all of time and space. Eventually, she does come across this guy who has found all the Easter eggs left by the 10th Doctor on these tapes and figures out that these tapes were left by the Doctor on 17 very different DVDs to give her directions on how to help him and Martha escape 1969. Yes, 1969. At the end of the episode, she and this guy end up getting into the TARDIS. The TARDIS leaves and they're left in this angel circle. and the circle of angels are fixed in time because they're looking at each other. Now, I would definitely say that this is considered a fan favorite Weeping Angel episode, even including all the Weeping Angel episodes that come after that. I really enjoy this episode as well because I like how everything is connected. Like, for example, we meet her friend, right? And then all of a sudden, her friend disappears, which actually she was sent back in time to the 1901 or the 1920s by an angel. And then at the exact same time, her grandson shows up to the mansion to deliver a note from her older self, her friend's older self. Another situation is where she meets this cop. He gets her number. They're supposed to go out on a date, but all of a sudden he disappears and is nowhere to be found. She gets a call from a hospital and meets the older version of this cop. And then at the end of the episode, she ends up finding out she was the one who helped the doctor. And this is where it kind of gets confusing. It's like she's already lived through the entire thing and never understood as to how the doctor was able to know what she was going to say. And then she finds out at the end of the episode she was the one that gave the doctor the transcript so that he was able to help her in his time period because it hasn't happened to him yet. I hope that makes sense. I just really enjoy that back and forth between the episode. So as of right now, I am going to put Blink at the number 2 spot. I just feel like even though we're only going through 6 episodes, it is a bit too early for me to already put it at the number 1 spot. I very much do enjoy this episode, but I kind of want to leave it open. I should also say at the end of this, I always give myself a second chance to change my ranking, but as of right now, Blink is going in the number 2 spot. The second episode that we see the angels in is called Time of the Angels. It is season 5, episode 4. It is basically the premise of the episode is the 11th Doctor is called to a place called the Byzantium, or I think that's the name of the ship. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. No, yes, the name of the ship is called the Byzantium, and he is basically written there and lured there by River Song. He doesn't necessarily know why when he first arrives, but he quickly figures out he's called in by River Song to basically help them extract a creature from the center of this ship. That creature ends up being a weeping angel. The ship, the Byzantium, ends up crashing into I believe it's called an Applin temple, is what it says in the episode. I might be saying that name wrong. And I should also say there's this one scene in the episode where Amy gets trapped by the angel because any image of an angel becomes an angel. Amy gets trapped in this kind of like, I wouldn't call it a trailer, but I'm going to call it a trailer as of right now. She gets trapped in this trailer and looks into the eyes of the angel, which you're not supposed to do because the eyes are the window to the soul. So it allowed the angel to kind of crawl into her eye. This is relevant for this episode and the next one we're going to be going over. That's why I mentioned it. But basically, as the doctor, the soldiers, and River Song and Amy are crawling through the Applin temples, they quickly start to go missing. The soldiers start to, get picked off one by one by one, and no one understands why until they get into this one spot. And the river and the doctor realize something that they did not realize first when they crawled in, and is the fact that the Applins, who are long dead at this point, had 2 heads, and every statue in that temple only has one. Basically, they realized that every Applin statue that they thought were Applins is a weeping angel, and they are now in danger of being X'd by all these angels that they are surrounded by. They also quickly realized that the angel who was trapped in the center of the ship crashed the ship on purpose so that the angels that were stuck in this temple could feed off the energy of the decaying ship. And because this is a 2-parter, we are kind of left on a bit of a cliffhanger. We are left with the doctor making what I would call one of his good speeches. I really love the speech at the end of this episode. And then he shoots up and it goes dark, and then it goes into the next episode. Because this is a 2-parter, I'm not going to judge them as one whole thing. I'm going to judge them as 2 separate things because yes, they do go together, but they're 2 separate episodes and different things happen in both of them. Of course, one is a continuation of the other, but they are 2 separate episodes, so I'm going to be ranking them as such. So, looking at this episode by itself, to be honest with you, this was actually the first Sleeping Angel episode I ever saw, because the first time I ever got a chance to watch Doctor Who was over my friend's house, and this was one of the first Doctor Who episodes she ever showed me. And I would say the different parts that I really love about this episode is that it is kind of the one of the first times this is the second time I believe we run into River Song, but it is also one of the first times that we were given more context to her character, which I very much enjoy. I enjoy the twist that it's not, these are not Applins, these are not burials of the Applins, these are all weeping angels that we have ran into. I also enjoy the storyline of something is happening with Amy, and we are not quite sure what it is. And of course, I really like Angel Bob. So, I don't know. I'm kind of reluctant to put this in the number one spot, but I think as of right now, I will put it in the number one spot. I might change it later, but the reason I'm putting it in the number one spot, it might be a little biased. The 11th Doctor is my favorite. I'm not going to lie about that. But also I just like the different aspects that are going on within the storyline with the soldiers, with River and the main soldier, with Amy. I just like all those elements being tied together, and the more information that we learn about the Weeping Angels in this episode that were unclear within the first episode, Blink. So it is going in the number one spot for me. Again, remember at the end of this, I get to change my ranking, but as of right now, it is going in the number one spot. So the next episode is called Flesh and Stone. It is also season 5, the very next episode. So episode 5, it is, like I said, the second part of the first episode. And what basically happens in this episode is, through the Doctor shooting up, he is able to land everyone on the top, or like a part of the Byzantium ship. They get inside the ship, and the ship is being raided by angels. And at this point, it's not an extraction mission. They are not going after the angel in the center of the ship anymore. At this point, they are really just trying to get rid of the angels and escape with their lives. And throughout the episode, we basically just kind of see them going through rooms and trying to figure things out. Amy is now counting down. I don't remember her countdown starts within the episode before, but it is continued now, and we are brought to understand as to why she's been counting down. And it is because Angel Bob tells the Doctor that there is an angel in her eye, meaning that when she looked into the Weeping Angel in the little ship, the little trailer tractor thing, the angel crawled inside of her mind and is coming to shut her down. We also end up finding a bit more about River Song and why she is in prison and what she was imprisoned for. The Doctor, who doesn't completely understand but kind of has an understanding. I don't think that's the best way to explain it, but he doesn't completely know River Song because they always meet in different orders, and his future is sometimes her past, and her past is sometimes his future. So, he finds out why she has been placed in jail, and he finds out it is because she exed someone, and he definitely doesn't like that. And to skip ahead, because this is kind of like, that is basically the majority of the premise of the episode. If I'm missing stuff, feel free to correct me in the comments. But towards the end of the episode, basically Amy is told to shut her eyes to stop the angel from being able to come out. Also, along with this episode, we are kind of getting more and more introduced to a bigger overarching plot line that goes over the season. I don't want to necessarily completely get into that because it gets more complicated, and again, it is the overarching thing that like leads to the season finale. But I will say, by the end of this episode, they are able to escape because the Doctor is able to work out a way to where all the angels fall into, I believe, the rift is the best way to call it. I don't completely remember off the top of my head, even though I did watch these yesterday. What there it's called is, Amy calls it the crack in her wall. So I think it is actually explained what it is in further episodes, but I have not watched the complete fifth season of Doctor Who in a few years, so you are going to have to you're going to have to give me a bit of grace. But yeah, if you're wondering, that is also another reason as to why how the doctor gets rid of the angel that was affecting Amy. Because they fell into the rift, they no longer technically exist, so therefore it cannot exist within her eye anymore. So I think this episode is good. I definitely don't think it, because it's a second parter, like it doesn't stand on its own compared to the first two episodes, which I think is one thing that really brings it down on my list, because I am also just putting these episodes as their own thing. So I would definitely say that I really did enjoy this episode, obviously, and especially if I'm putting it as the continuation of the episode before it. But as a standalone episode, I would definitely have to put it in the number 5 spot, because well, yes, I have to compare them to the other two because that's what my ranking is. Compared to the other two, it is a lot more running around. And yes, we are given more context, but we aren't given as much context or understanding, in my opinion, that we are given in the other two episodes. So that is why, for me, it is going in the number 4 spot. The next Weeping Angel episode is called Angels in Manhattan. This one is season 7, episode 5. Basically, the premise of this episode is that the Doctor, Rory, and Amy are in New York, and somehow, some way, actually, we know how, but Rory gets sent back in time to, it is April 3rd, 1938, in Manhattan. That is important. That date is important. That's why I made sure to say the whole thing. But he's basically sent back in time to that date by a weeping angel. When he's there, he meets up with River, but I will get back to that a little bit later. Still in present day 2012, Amy and the Doctor realize that Rory has been sent back in time by weeping angels. The reason they realize this is because they read it in a book, and they're kind of curious as to why the book matches up with what is currently happening. And at this point, the Doctor is like, we cannot read ahead in the book because everything we read is set in stone. And before the Doctor and Amy try to head to April 3rd, 1938, Amy reads that Rory X's. So it is kind of set in stone at this point, but knowing the Doctor, he wants that to not happen, obviously. So the reason this date is so important is because it is kind of like a energy source for the angels. It is basically their domain, which makes it a lot harder for the TARDIS to land on this specific day, to the point where the Doctor damages the TARDIS even getting it there. I think River describes it as like trying to park something in a hurricane. I don't remember the exact reference, but that's basically how she says it. Like it's a very hard thing to do. Now at this point, all of our characters, that being Amy, Rory, the Doctor, River Song, are all in April 3rd, 1938. And a bunch of events end up happening. I'm not going to go over everything that specifically happens in this episode, just the important ones. An important one being that River gets stuck by an angel, and the Doctor tries to have her release herself without breaking it, because Amy read that River broke her wrist. So the Doctor wanted her to not break her wrist, as to prove that they can change time, because of the other thing that Amy read in the book. That ends up not happening, but they end up tracking Rory because he does get put in the basement with baby angels, and the baby angels, I guess, aren't strong enough to send him back in time. So they basically displace him to a different part of the city, which he ends up at a hotel called Winter Key. And at this hotel, Rory discovers a room with his name on it. He enters the room, and everyone also follows suit and enters the room with him, because they were trying to track him down. And they end up discovering an older Rory on his deathbed. Basically, Amy walks up to him, he's excited to see her, and then he passes away. And so basically, this is another event that solidifies, because they saw it, that Rory passes away in 1938. But again, of course, the Doctor, Amy, River don't want this to happen. And so they basically end up separating throughout the hotel. River and the Doctor go together because they're married. And then Amy and Rory go together because they're married. And basically, Amy and Rory formulate this plan so that they can kind of make an event happen. To explain it in like the least amount of words, they basically are trying to disrupt the timeline so that those events don't happen. So they basically end up jumping off a building to do that, and it ends up working. And so now at this point, the Doctor, River, Amy and Rory are in current day 2012. They're about to all head back into the TARDIS and everything's happy go lucky. And then as they're heading back to the TARDIS, Rory stops and finds it funny that he sees a guy with his exact same name on a tombstone. And at this moment in time, Amy turns around and Rory is gone again. He is sent back in time again, back to April 3rd, 1938, by an angel that survived the event. And at this point, again, it was already practically impossible for the Doctor to get to the date April 3rd, 1938. So he is not able to take the TARDIS back there to go and get him. It's just, River basically says that he could cause a paradox. He could rip time. He could rip New York if he tries to do that. And so what Amy ends up doing is saying her goodbyes to the doc. If you hear something in the background, I completely apologize. Someone decided to literally start vacuuming as I'm filming. But basically what I was saying is Amy decides to say her goodbyes to the doctor and joins her husband back in 1938 to be able to live out the rest of her life with him. And if you remember that book I talked about in the beginning of the episode, basically River is the one who wrote it under the name Melody Malone, and so she still hasn't written the book yet. So as she is getting in the TARDIS with the doctor, she says, "Well, I can, since I have to give this book to Amy for it to be published, I can have her write you a note at the end of the book." And so at the end of the episode, we get this heartfelt message written to the doctor from Amy, and that's the last time he's allowed to see her. So I genuinely do enjoy this episode. I really like the introduction of baby angels and us seeing more and more angels. I basically like how, like, with every single episode we get more details about the angels, because at this point they still are a practically new creature to Doctor Who. I understand like these episodes came out in like 2012 and it's been over 10 years, but they only have 6 episodes that are technically considered their episodes. So that's not a lot if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. We still do not know a lot about the angels. And again, as I said with Blink, I liked the fact that there was different aspects of the story that tied back in time and tied forward in time. That being, us seeing Rory get sent back in time, us seeing old Rory, us seeing the book, and then River having not even written the book yet, and us seeing how things that are written like that are become fixed in time. They're not fixed until they're read. I thought that was very interesting, and personally for me, this is the first time I'd seen something like this happen in Doctor Who. I also very much loved Amy and Rory as the Doctor's companions, and I think their story is really cool, especially with everything else that went on this season, which I won't say because I'm trying to judge this purely based off the episode compared to the other episodes, but those contexts are also important to the story, but I will try to keep them out of my judgment because when you're just looking at this episode, they have nothing to do with anything. But just as a fan, I thought it was really cool that in the end, Amy ended up choosing Rory when Rory always thought Amy chose the doctor over him. But on this list, I think I would have to put it at the number 3 spot. I think it is a really good Weeping Angel episode with all the characters and all the madness that ensues. So the next Weeping Angel episode is Once Upon a Time. It's season 13, episode 3. Now, I would say this is the first episode that I think is in that gray area. And what I mean by that is, again, like I said, I wasn't including episodes where it was like a cameo from the angels, but according to everyone else, this is considered an angel episode, which is why I included it. But it also does set up the next episode, which I guess is why it was considered to be an angel episode. But basically the premise of the episode is we are starting off with something that obviously ties in to the episode beforehand. And I would argue that the entire season 13 of Doctor Who, every episode ties into each other. None of them can stand alone like they can in previous episodes or previous seasons. But basically, we are first introduced to the Doctor. She throws herself and Yaz and Dan into a time storm. She throws them into the time storm in an effort to escape the big bad of the entire season. And basically doing this, she hides them in different points in their life so that they are not able to be discovered. And throughout this happening, throughout us seeing each of their stories, we see a weeping angel like in the background lurking. In Yaz's episode, for example, she's sitting on a couch playing a video game with her sister, and all of a sudden an angel appears within the video game, and the only way she could get rid of the angel is by breaking the game console. And I really don't have much to say about this episode because that's basically what the gist of it is. We're just bouncing back between the doctor story, Yaz's story, and Dan's story. And at the end of the episode, the doctor is able to gather all of them out of the time stream. And as Yaz is sitting on the steps of the TARDIS, inside the TARDIS, she looks at her phone and sees a weeping angel in her phone. Now, how that weeping angel got there, I do not particularly know. Maybe I missed it if it was explained in the episode, but I don't remember seeing how the angel got into her phone. Basically, remember, any image of an angel becomes an angel. So the angel pops out of the phone and takes control of the TARDIS, and the doctor freaks out because an angel has control of the TARDIS, and that is where the episode ends. So again, I feel like every episode in season 13 cannot stand alone. It is like a greater part of the story. One thing I like about Doctor Who is that you can watch an episode in season 3 and then a random episode in like season 5. Like if you were to watch like The Beast Below in season 5 and then watch Fires of Pompeii in, I think that's like season 3, you could understand both of these episodes without having seen any prior episodes, and that's one of the things I like about Doctor Who. But the entire of season 13, it's like you need the first, second, third, fourth episode to understand what's going on in the seventh. Again, comparing it to the other Weeping Angel episodes, and that is because, again, I feel like the angel is just kind of like this looming figure that doesn't truly take precedent precedent. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. Within the episode, it's kind of just like a background character, which is why I say it's in that gray area. And it's another reason as to why I would say it is going in the number 6 spot. The last and final episode is called Village of the Angels. It is season 3, episode 4. Now, if you remember in the last episode, the angel took a hold of the TARDIS, and so now in this episode, the angel has a hold of the TARDIS. So what the doctor does is she kind of reboots the TARDIS and ejects the angel. And at this point, the TARDIS needs time to recharge. It cannot move. So the doctor, Yaz, and Dan are stuck wherever the TARDIS decided to land. They end up landing in this town on and slash in November 21st, 1967. We are introduced to characters called Claire Brown and Professor Jericho. This is not the first time we've seen Claire. Again, like I said, season 13, everything connects. But this is the first time we're seeing Professor Jericho. But basically, Yaz and Dan help this old couple find their daughter. She's not their daughter, but they've taken her in because they're her family, because she's somehow disappeared. And the doctor is trying to figure out where they are, figure out what's happening. And this is not the first time that she has seen Claire. So she's also wondering, how did you get here? How, like, it's 1967. Last time I saw you, it was like what? I believe like 2022, 2023. I might be wrong on those dates, but definitely it wasn't 1967. And so as the episode continues, we see weird things happening. Like, for example, an old woman tells this preacher, I believe he is, to count the gravestones because there's a few more gravestones than there are supposed to be, which ends up being true. And he ends up, the last gravestone he counts ends up being a weeping angel, and he's sent back in time. There's two different things happening because Yaz and Dan are separated from the doctor. So I will talk about Yaz and Dan first and what's going on with them, and then I will jump back to the doctor. I'll probably jump back and forth. But now going with Yaz and Dan, what ends up happening is they end up running into an angel and getting sent back to 1901. And in 1901, they find Peggy, the little girl that they were looking for in the first place. Peggy is fine. She is not worried. She says that, the angel said they're not going to hurt her anymore. They're not going to mess with her anymore. And Peggy ends up showing Dan and Yaz that they're stuck in this 1901 village, and the village is stuck somewhere in space, basically. That would absolutely scare the bejesus out of me. But anyways, moving back to the doctor, Claire and Professor Jericho, they basically get trapped in a house in Professor Jericho's mansion because there are angels all outside trying to get in. And we find out across the episode that the reason that or at least first reason or conclusion they jump to, is that the reason that angels are trying to get into the house is to go after the angel that we find out is stuck in Claire's head. And the angel doesn't want to come out of Claire's head because it is trying to just escape, because it has information about the division, which I'm not going to go into what the division is because that ties into the overarching storyline of the season and it just gets too confusing. So I will just say that's why Angel is in Claire's head. Throughout this, what ends up happening is that they are just trying to avoid the angels trying to escape, and they end up escaping out of this tunnel. What ends up happening in the tunnel is that Professor Jericho is sent back in time to 1901. Claire somehow disappears and the doctor is in the tunnel. Before I continue with that story, I'm going to jump back to Dan and Yaz. So again, they're in 1901 and they come across this kind of like in between area where on this side of the in between is the 1967 world, and on this side, the side that they're on, is 1901. They cannot cross this border, but they can see it. And at this border, it's Peggy, Dan, Yaz, and Professor Jericho. They are talking to this older woman who we find out is an older version, a lot older version of Peggy, who had to end up spending her life in 1901 to current day 1967. And so again, they cannot cross this border. And so jumping back to the doctor is in a tunnel about to try to escape the angels, and then she realizes the angels are not actually going after her, and she is confused. When she pops out of the tunnel, she sees Claire standing with all the angels, and it turns out that the angel inside of Claire made a deal with the rest of the angels, who end up being kind of like this entrapment squad. That's not what they're called in the episode, but that's the way I can explain it. But the angel inside of Claire makes a deal with the rest of the angels that she will trade the doctor for herself, because I guess Division wants the doctor more than it wants Claire's angel. And so the doctor gets encased in stone as a weeping angel, as her companions Yaz, Dan, and everyone else on the side of 1901 cannot do anything but watch her get taken by the angels. I think this episode was really fun to watch. I think it was a really good episode. Compared to the other episodes, I feel like some of the other episodes hit more for me, but I will say I very much did enjoy seeing just the way the angels attacked in this episode. The part where the doctor gets turned into an angel is very interesting. I like the point where there's like an angel on a piece of paper and then it becomes a real angel. And yeah, overall, I really only have one spot left, but again, I get to revise my list. As of right now, this is going in the number 5 spot. So before I revise my list, as of right now, we have going from number 1 to number 6, we have Time of the Angels, Blink, Angels in Manhattan, Flesh and Stone, Village of the Angels, Once Upon a Time. Now I'm going to revise my list and revise my ranking, because I can already tell there's, after going through all of them with you and revisiting them again, I know there's a few changes I would definitely like to make. So I'm going to make them and I will be back for you to say my revised list. Okay, so I have revised my list and I will now read you the final ranking and my final results. Again, going from 1 being the most liked to 6 being the least liked. Of course, I enjoy all these episodes. I am a Doctor Who fan, but the most to least. So starting from the top, we have Blink, Time of the Angels, Angels in Manhattan, Village of the Angels, Flesh and Stone, Once Upon a Time. So that is my ranking. I would love to know your ranking in the comment section down below. If you would like to explain yourself, feel free to do that. If you don't want to explain yourself, you don't have to do that at all. But I hope you enjoyed. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more of me. I post every Wednesday. I hope you have a good weekend, weekday, weeknight, and bye!